live chat is going right now. So if you are looking for a place to chat the game, you can go to purpleptsd.com or vikingsterritory.com and you'll see it. It's probably the top post there. The game is kickoffs in about a half an hour, so I won't be long. I just wanted to talk about the game a little bit. I showed my new background yesterday in a video. If you guys want to check that out, there's some really cool stuff. I just added this like 1950s Twins hat to it. It's like really small. Anyway, yeah. It's hard to kind of overstate how important I think this game is, or the beginning of the season is in general. If you follow any of my articles or my podcast, Morning Joe's, you'll see a lot. You would have seen a lot of optimism this offseason. I think that mixed in with that optimism was a realization that as a Kirk Cousins acolyte and one of the first guys or main guys to angrily argue that Cousins should come here, I'm also realizing that not to say that he makes excuses, but the excuses for him by people like me will be over this season if things don't go the way that they should. I think, the offensive line has been bolstered in almost a remarkable fashion just in one offseason. I mean, they had enough depth to cut Jones again. I feel bad for that guy. He's like the battered wife of the Vikings. They bring him in, they don't use him even though they really needed him. They get rid of him, they bring him back, and then they cut him again to make room for Josh Doctson. Now, not just because the Vikings have 2 division games in the first 4 games, really important ones, is the reason I'm saying this. That was a great sentence. I'm not saying that just because of the divisional aspects of it, but if this team starts out slow, it'll just be, I could see things going sideways really quickly. That having been said, I was very confident, still am, that Cardinals game freaked me out a lot, mainly because Cousins looked so off. I mean, it just didn't look right, and I feel like there's more to the story. Maybe they were running a lot of some of the newer wrinkles, and he just seemed a step behind, like he was processing too much and not playing or thinking too much. So I'm hoping that'll be rectified. It's been, over a week since that game. I'm not surprised. Let's go over some of the inactives. Not surprised Doctson isn't playing. They're not gonna put a guy in who doesn't really know the offense in a relatively complex offense, I can assume, especially with the Kubiak wrinkles. Mike Hughes isn't playing. That's not a huge surprise either. It's too bad, though, just with, obviously, the Holton Hill situation. I really think one of the main keys of this game, obviously, Julio Jones and Matt Ryan are good. Julio's a beast. He signed his extension. But the Vikings, Zimmer and Rhodes, especially, have had a lot of success against these guys. I don't think Julio's broken 60 yards a game against the Vikings in the 3 games that he's played in the Zimmer regime. 3? 2 for sure. I think it's 3. I wrote about it, so you think I'd remember. And his career average is almost 100 yards a game, so that's impressive. And a lot of people give that credit to Rhodes. That's fair, but there's also a lot of, safety help, a lot of just general help, two high safeties. The thing that it worries me a little bit is just that when that happened last season, Ridley feasted. I think he had 10 touchdowns last season, 800 yards. So what they do with him, how Trey Waynes plays, Mackenzie Alexander, that'll be a huge component of this game. The defense has looked good this preseason. They've done a lot of their bending and not breaking. There's been a lot of talk of them simplifying the defense, letting them just play, not coming out like they did to start the season last year. But it'll be interesting to see how those new offensive linemen for the Falcons hold up against this defensive line. I know the Falcons wanted to make sure that Matt Ryan wasn't on his ass a lot this season. I think he was sacked 42 times last year, which is the second most in his career. So they brought in those 2 new offensive line men, and they're going to be going up against Danielle Hunter. I fully expect Everson Griffin to be back to Everson Griffin levels, this year. Obviously we all know what happened with him last year, which was unfortunate. Just in general, I don't mean for the team, I mean for him, as somebody who clearly has struggled with mental health, and I say that because look at the hat I'm wearing. And I make jokes because laughter is the best medicine. I know how hard it is. I know how all-encompassing it can be. I know how it makes things that you usually like look pointless. You get really apathetic. And so I think that I hope that he has found some semblance of peace, just for himself. But we're talking about football, so I don't want to sound gross, but in terms of football, I fully expect him to be back. I mean, I think a lot of people, kind of wrote him off because of that, or thought, he was over the hill. I mean, he's what, 31 years old? I think he'll be, he's still in his athletic prime. The dude's a beast. And I expect him to be back is my point. So, I'll be really excited to see him and Hunter, feasting, to see Linval out there and playing and somewhat healthy. Beyond that, though, on the offensive side of the ball, obviously, it's going to come down to Cousins. I know that they're really going to try to establish the run today, and it'll look different than it did last season, hopefully. But in general, I mean, there's going to be more zone runs. I think that they really want to set up the play action. That's where Cousins is, I would argue, elite play action quarterback. So they didn't get a chance to do that a lot last year because they didn't run the ball ever. So I'm just really excited to see, obviously, more complicated wrinkles from the Kubiak offense. I know it's a Stefanski offense, but I mean what Kubiak has brought to it. They didn't really show a ton of it this preseason. I mean, they showed some of it, but lining up Irv Smith Jr. at the wide receiver position, 2 tight end sets beyond that, having perhaps Cook and Madison in the backfield at the same time, and not just one blocking, but just throwing some wrinkles into it to show that this team, more so than I think any team in Vikings in my lifetime, I was gonna say Vikings history, but in my lifetime, is a pick your poison team. I mean, Cousins was known for spreading the ball around, especially in Washington, and there was an argument that maybe he didn't have a lot of talent, especially the last season, so just he didn't have like a main guy to go to. But I could really see him, connecting with 8 different receivers today, and I am excited about that. I do think that if the Vikings have a lot of success and make a deep run, I've said this on Morning Joe's, that they will end up, we will end up looking back at what the difference was, and that difference being would be Kubiak. If you look at his history in Baltimore, especially, there was that season, I think it was 2014 to 2015, pretty much identical personnel, but just like a switch flipped. Man, I need to drink more caffeine before I do these shows. Bringing that offense from the 30th and 32nd in overall offense and rushing to 12th and 8th. There's just so much more talent on this team. The offensive line has some depth and options. Brian O'Neill didn't play a lot this preseason. He was injured, so hopefully he won't be too rusty or sophomore slumpy. Elflein has struggled this preseason, which actually surprised me a little bit, but at first, but when you think about it, not really. I mean, he hasn't played guard in the NFL. He hasn't played guard for a few seasons. I think it was his junior year. His senior year, he switched to center. I'm obviously excited to see what Bradbury does, the holes that he can open. He looked every bit the first-round stud that they hoped he was this preseason. So, I'm cautiously optimistic about today's game, just in terms of the success that Zimmer and everyone has had on defense. Just them being able to roll out some of their more expansive and sneaky stuff that now that the preseason's over, the offensive line, so on and so forth. I will say too that having watched, and I'll have an article about this tomorrow on Vikings territory, but having watched the Bears and the Packers, I'm very glad we're facing both of them, especially the Packers week 2. I do think that Rodgers taking time off, or not playing this preseason, was a relatively large mistake, considering it's the first new offense that he's had in the NFL. Not to say that McCarthy didn't switch things up. He did, but they've been running a pretty similar offense his entire career. So that just seems strange to me. I mean, even Drew Brees was out there throwing balls. So it'll be fun to play them week 2. It is at home, which is good. I would rather face them at home when they're still putting things together. Even the general manager before Thursday night's game said, talk to me like week 8, week 9. That's when we'll know what kind of team we have, because we're still putting a lot of things together. So I think I did mention the divisional stuff with the Bears being week 4, and I think the Vikings, I'm confident in their chances after watching that game. I'm not just because I hate the Packers, but I don't understand why everyone was picking them as the top power ranking team or the Super Bowl team. I get why they do it because of Rodgers, but there's just so many question marks on both sides of the ball for that team. Anyway, for today's game, the inactives are Hughes, Oli Udoh, Armon Watts, Tyler Conklin, Holmes, Drew Samia, Josh Doxson. I am predicting a Vikes win. I said 24-21 on Morning Joe's. I'm going to stick to that. I know the show is called The Smoke Break. Usually I'm outside smoking, but I'm not doing that because I don't smoke in my house and I have my new background. And beyond that, point being that I'm going to be smoking a lot during field goal kicks. That's the last thing I'll leave this at. I believe in Bailey. I hope things with BB holding go well, but I'll be a little nervous watching some of those kicks until things settle in. So thank you, everyone, for watching. I am watching a preview of this on my computer, so I will fix the bars on the side of the... let's actually test it now. I knew that was going to happen. Okay, so yesterday when I was testing this, everything was sideways, and now I tried to fix it, but now it looks like everything's in portrait mode, and I know that just makes me look even older than I am at 35 years old, but my girlfriend is good at this kind of stuff, so I'll have her fix this. I will also be back for halftime and after the game, and then we will also have a episode of About the Labor after my post-game show. So tune in. Hopefully I'll be able to get some questions from you guys. You can tweet them at me during the game. I'll be live tweeting. Otherwise, come to our live chat. It's like I said earlier, it's on Purple PTSD and Vikings territory. You've heard some of the beeps in the background. Those are people talking. Kickoffs in about 20 minutes. I promise I'll have more caffeine by halftime. And Skull Vikings, let's go. Hopefully everything starts out great, and I'll have a reason to live after the game. See you guys soon.